What would you say if I told you that every choice you've ever made is actually two choices? The first is the explicit selection you actually did make, the thing that you really actually wanted. But at the same time, every active decision is also an implicit rejection of the vast, nearly infinite array of things that you just didn't pick. Simply sitting down to make this video was making a choice, and also rejecting a vast array of things I could otherwise be doing. I could be making a different video. I could be playing a game, baking a cake, going for a run. There's literally no limit to the alternatives that you can choose in any moment. So in today's video, I'm talking about what choice really is, what it really means, and how we can make the best ones. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Andre here. Today we're talking about the idea of choice and trying to figure out what exactly that is. Whether it's something trivial like where to get your morning coffee or something consequential like where to send your kids to school, the good news is these are things that human beings have been thinking about for thousands of years. The bad news is that these are things that human beings have been thinking about for thousands of years. Because across the intellectual spectrum, no matter what anyone tells you, whether it's physics, economics, or philosophy, no one has ever come up with an ironclad, foolproof system for making logical, rational choices. So the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is a choice?
Once you get the facts, you have to think about them until they fall into logical order.
First and foremost, we have to understand that from a practical perspective, people do make choices. Whether it's what shirt to wear, what car to drive, or what food to eat, every single day we're confronted with real, practical selections that must be made. But from a strictly textbook intellectual perspective, there is a question as to whether or not the free will necessary to actually make a selection actually exists, and we'll get to that later. But for now, we're going to focus on the assumption that yes, in fact, humans have sufficient free will to make a decision on their own. It won't surprise you to hear that there's a vast number of opinions about what exactly choice entails and how we go about making them. So for the purpose of this video, I want to focus on Aristotle's idea of choice, specifically that it's some voluntary action preceded by some form of deliberation. All it's really saying is that the things we do are based on some kind of thought and evaluation of what's important to us at the time. The thing that's really fascinating about that is that no two people will evaluate things the same way. No two people are exactly the same because that would be too easy. This is what makes understanding other people's choices so hard, because we don't always know what's important to them or how those important things rank against all of the other important things. If you ask most people, they'd probably say that their family is the most important thing to them. But we've all heard or even been a part of stories where things like politics destroy families. Well, if family is the most important thing, then how can a political candidate come between you and your kid? And that brings us to the question of conscious versus unconscious choice and the motivations that go along with it, because we don't always consciously know what it is that's motivating us to make a particular decision. If you've ever been in an argument with a significant other, you know that the argument you're having isn't really the argument you're having. The conflict isn't about who should empty the dishwasher. It's about striking a balance among household responsibilities and being sure that you're respectful of each other's time. So in much the same way, if we don't understand why it is that we're doing something or why it is that we're arguing about something, we can't hope to establish rational decision making. And certainly we can't expect other people to understand our irrational decision making. We may think that we're making rational, logical decisions, and in some cases, maybe we are. But in other situations, we're being influenced or directly controlled by unconscious fears, anxieties, hopes, desires, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes you feel it in your gut, sometimes you want to admit it to yourself, and sometimes you don't. But the fact remains that there are conscious, explicit factors in our decision-making process and unconscious, implicit factors in our choices and decision-making process. Maybe a slightly more robust or expansive definition than Aristotle offered us would be that a choice is a voluntary action taken as a result of conscious deliberation and unconscious motivators. Yeah, I can see where this gets really complicated.
Oh, you want a quick, easy formula, eh? I'm afraid there isn't any.
So now that we've talked about what choice actually is, it begs the question, does it actually exist? If we accept that there are unconscious factors that influence or control some of our decisions, isn't it possible that all of our decisions are outside of our control? Isn't it possible that all of our decisions are influenced and controlled by unconscious or unseen factors? And this is probably the great philosophical debate of human history. And the two schools of thought here are 100% mutually exclusive. They are the Bloods and the Crips of philosophical debate. On the one side, you have free will, the idea that humans are free to make any decision they want at any time. I could make this video just as easily as I could jump out the window, run naked down the street, or get on a plane, go to Nepal, and become a Buddhist monk. The only thing guiding my decision-making process are the priorities that I actively choose to emphasize, which are themselves based on free will choices that I make in real time every moment. On the other hand, you have determinism, which is the idea that every choice, event, or action is based directly on the results of a previous set of choice, decisions, or actions, and therefore determine the results of every subsequent choice, decision, or action. No event or action is ever truly random or the result of any kind of free will because it's always predetermined by what came before it and therefore predetermines what comes after it. Everything that happens in the world, every opinion that you have, every event that transpires is really just part of a large predetermined system that's going to run its course no matter what we do. In fact, everything that we do is just part of that system because there's no way to escape the cause and effect of every single thing that's influencing every single thing that we experience on a daily basis. And there's a really good quote that kind of sums all of this up from a guy named Marquis de Laplace. And it goes, "If a mind at any given moment could know all of the forces operating in nature and the respective positions of all of its components, it would thereby know with certainty the future and the past of every entity, large or small." So a determinist would say that if you had enough data, and if you could understand the relationships between all of the entities within that data, you could predict the future and recount the past with perfect detail.
How he thinks and acts affects the course of democracy.
If I sound skeptical about the idea of determinism, it's because I 100% am. Essentially, the theory of determinism is saying if we knew everything, we could predict anything. Yeah, no kidding. But what that also does is it eliminates personal responsibility from the equation. It says basically, you're not responsible for anything you do, say, or think. After all, you're just a product of this long, inconceivable string of events and circumstances, which is where the idea of indeterminism comes in. It says that some things are known to us and are able to be controlled by free will, but other things are completely beyond our control and circumstances to understand and influence. I think an indeterministic model actually makes a lot more sense, if only from a practical perspective, because whether or not we are actually making free will oriented choices or being influenced by the inconceivable set of data and influences in our lives, the reality is we have to go through the exercise of making decisions whether we're really making them or not. To say that they are outside of our conscious control and we're all just puppets to this gigantic supernatural process is, again, kind of a cop-out because it eliminates the reality of the experience of making choices, which, whether or not it exists, is something that we are consciously subjected to.
These are the steps to self-reliance as I see them.
And that idea of the experience of making a choice brings us to the discussion of how we actually make our choices and what we can do to make better choices. The experience of making decisions and making choices is deeply rooted in our own personal biographies and stories because those are the things that influence our selection of what's important and how those important things rank against all the other important things. When I first started this channel, I knew that I wanted to be creative and I wanted to put work out into the world, but I didn't really truly understand what it is that I wanted to do or accomplish. For the first few months, I just kind of did a little bit of everything. I did a bunch of different types of videos without having a really clear idea of what it is I was trying to express, what it is I wanted to say. And it wasn't until I took a step back and really thought about what I wanted to contribute to the world, to the conversation that exists, that it became much more clear to me what kind of videos and what kind of topics I should be addressing. So in much the same way, I try to approach all of my choices and decision making by saying, what is it that is motivating this, really? And then when I think I have an answer, I step even further back and I say, are you sure about that? What's motivating that? Now, obviously, at some point you have to stop doing this because you can't just keep asking these questions. At some point, you have to take action. You have to make those choices. But even taking a few minutes or a few days to really think about why you want the thing that you think you want can make a huge difference in your approach, your outlook, and whether you're successful or not. And it's this kind of evaluation of whether or not selections match your values, goals, or objectives that corresponds kind of nicely with the economic theory of trade-off, which is that any choice that you make also prohibits you from making a bunch of other choices. And this is what we talked about at the beginning of the video. Every choice you make is also a rejection of some set of other choices. The way that you evaluate these decisions, at least in economics, is by considering something called opportunity cost, or the value that each of the options gives you based on the different features that it has. So if you want to watch a half-hour comedy or an hour-long drama, they're both potentially going to entertain you. The question is, what kind of entertainment are you looking for, and how do those shows correspond to what you want in that moment?
Although newspaper and radio reports give us wide and speedy coverage of events, they have some limitations.
I opened this video by talking about how every choice that we make is actually two choices. The choice that we're making and an infinite set of choices that we're not. And in some ways, this can be absolutely paralyzing because we live in a world where we have access to information about so many different options. I have spent hours looking at reviews about light bulbs. So I understand fully well how you can undergo analysis paralysis, trying to understand what the best option for you will be at any given time because you don't want to miss out on any value. Which is why I put such an emphasis now on stepping back from any question and saying, what's most important to me? What are the light bulb features that I'm looking for? And how do these correspond to the central values and objectives that I have for my life? I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is the only way to do these things. I'm not saying that it is necessarily the explicitly best way to make your decisions. All I'm saying is that it's the thing that's working for me right now. That's really, really all I can offer. All right, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. That is what it's there for. And if you want to follow along with future videos, hit the subscribe button. That is also what it's there for. But that's it for now. So as always, you will see me in the next video.